Today we're going to be looking at two different economic issues. First, we're going to look at taxes and whether or not we should maintain our progressive tax structure and increase taxes on wealthy citizens, or should we decrease? Should we cut taxes for the wealthiest citizens? So the question will be, should we cut taxes? We recently saw a massive tax cut passed by President Trump, and this will kind of debate a lot of the issues that relate to that. Then, secondly, as an economic issue, should we increase the minimum wage to be a living wage for all workers? So, let's get into it. First issue we're going to talk about is, should we cut taxes for America's wealthiest citizens? On one hand, you have one side saying that the current tax system is allowing the rich to get richer with tax cuts for the wealthiest citizens. On the other hand, yeah, that the government is shaking hardworking citizens down of their money that they earned, and the government is going to waste and spend and has no right to. So let's give a little background to the tax debate. 16th Amendment to the Constitution allowed federal income tax to be in place. How tax structure should exist has been a sticking point between liberals and conservatives for decades. The federal income tax currently has a progressive structure. What that means is that if you earn more money, you pay a higher percentage of your taxes, of your income to taxes. So if I earn over $250,000 a year, then I might pay 37%, as opposed to if I was only earning $50,000 a year, I might be only paying 25%. The highest percentage for the highest earners was over 90% at one point during World War II to pay for the war. And it was between 60 and 70% between the 1950s and 60s. But conservatives had long pushed to flatten the tax and reduce the tax rate paid by everyone. And this really came to fruition with the election of President Reagan in the 1980s with the supply side economic agenda that really cut tax rates. And whether or not we should continue to cut tax rates, in particular for the wealthy, or if we should increase taxes on the wealthiest Americans, has been a major economic sticking point between liberals and conservatives for more than a generation. So let's look at the conservative side, because if the question is, should we cut taxes for America's wealthiest citizens, conservatives are going to say, yes, we should cut taxes for all citizens of the United States. The progressive income tax policy is wrong. It's wrong-headed. It's based on a bad philosophy because it penalizes success, argue the conservatives. It penalizes innovation, and it rewards failure and laziness. The current income tax structure forces you to pay a greater percentage of your income that you are able, a greater percentage of your income with when you are able to increase your earnings. So the people who earn the most and the people who risk the most and invested the most of their time and their finances to make their businesses a success now get more and more taxes in return. The government takes more and more of a percentage of their money. So essentially, the harder you work, the more success you have, the more the government penalizes you for it. And the people who own a company, the people who are entrepreneurs, the people who push forward this business, who are the highest income makers, they didn't do that by accident. They did it through hard work. They did it through investment, and they create jobs. So the government is taking more and more of their income and your income based off of how hard you work. Well, discourages people from entrepreneurship. If I know, hey, if I take the risk of starting a business and work really hard, then I'm going to have the government take more of my money, kind of takes away the incentive to do that. In fact, the top 10% of all earners pay more than 70% of all taxes. There's many people who don't pay any income taxes, a huge portion of the population. And the wealthy don't benefit from the taxes the same that those who pay zero into it. So these people don't pay into the system, yet they are rewarded for it. It's almost as if the tax structure is saying, hey, you worked hard? Here, we're going to make you pay more. We're going to penalize you for that. Hey, you don't work? Hey, you sit on your couch and choose not to work? You don't choose to seek a job? Oh, we're going to give you all these extra benefits. It's kind of a backward system. Shouldn't we be incentivizing success and making failure something that people want to try to avoid? Conservatives would argue that our tax structure has an opposite effect of what you would want in an economy. They argue that a progressive tax structure also leads to a lot of waste by the government. Higher rate of taxes, the more money the government gets. The more money the government gets, the larger the government gets. The larger the government gets, the more it interferes with the interests of business. The more it gets involved and stopping the creators of jobs, the creators of innovation, the creatives of industry, and stifles them with unnecessary regulations and becomes a blockade for innovation, becomes a blockade for great ideas, becomes a blockade for more jobs. The higher the tax rate, the more ineffective, costly, and unconstitutional government programs that we see. There are many programs that are inflated, ridiculous, very high tax structure. Besides that, just income tax, if we look at state taxes, sales taxes, the taxes that you pay onto your phones, that you pay onto your earnings in the stock market, all these different things. There's so many different taxes that you pay, not to mention estate taxes when you die. And these all feed into what programs? Programs for healthcare, for education, and the environment that appear nowhere in the Constitution, that should be left to the states and private industry to figure out, not left to the federal government to get bigger and more bureaucratic and get involved in these things and not do a good job. In the words of President Reagan, the 7 scariest words, maybe 9 scariest words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Government isn't the solution to the problem. It is the problem. So if we reduce taxes, then we in turn reduce the size and scope of our government, and it becomes less of an interference on our economic freedoms. And it will force them to roll back wasteful spending. It will force them to make better, stronger decisions instead of wasting our money on things that are not necessary and not constitutional. Lastly, they're going to argue cutting taxes for all, but especially the wealthiest citizens, boosts the economy and generates jobs. The more money that job creators and corporate leaders have, and small business leaders have, the more they can invest back into their business, more they can invest back into their economy. If you give them savings on taxes, that means that they can hire more workers. That means that they can spend for more supplies into the economy. If I own a company, I buy from company B, then company B is making money, and then they can also then spend and buy things from company C. It trickles down and affects everybody. So giving tax cuts to the top eventually filters through the entire economy, where everybody is making more. And overall, making sure that every American gets to keep a little bit more of their hard-earned money, a little bit more of the money that you worked hard to earn. Not Uncle Sam, not the government. The money that you worked hard to earn means that you can invest more and more into improving your life, into making your life better, instead of relying on the government to do it for you. And there's a big thing on this, that the more that the government makes you have to rely on it for all these programs, the more dependent you are. Instead, if we reduce taxes for everyone, you're more independent, and your economic success is left up to you. Lastly, lower tax rate encourages businesses to invest their money in the United States, because other countries have cut their tax rates, and U.S. businesses are like, should I keep my money in country A, where my money, I'm going to be making a smaller percentage of my money, or in country B, where I'll be able to keep way more of my money? I'm probably going to go country B. Right now, the conservatives say we're country A, and a lot of country businesses are moving their business out of our country. The liberal, on the other hand, is going to say, no, we shouldn't cut taxes for America's wealthiest citizens. In fact, we should increase taxes for our wealthiest citizens, argue the liberals. They're going to say that the wealthy benefit the most from our economic system. They benefit from taxes the most. Don't tell me that they don't benefit from taxes. They can afford to pay for the higher rates because they make the most money. Top 1% of our population makes 13.5% of all wealth. The top 10% make 40%. Yet the top 50% accounts for almost only 11% of all earnings. So the top 1% make more than the bottom 50%. They can afford to pay more taxes, argue the liberals. And they're also going to argue that they do benefit from taxes. If I own a business, my business is dependent on the roads, bridges, airports, harbors, all those things that were built and are facilitated by our government. My employees are educated in public schools, which is facilitated by the government. I'm dependent on the government to have new employees that are educated and intelligent. I don't have to worry about people attacking my business because the government provides police. If there's an accident, the government provides medical care and first responders. I don't have to worry about being targeted by foreign countries because we have our government providing a military. The wealthy benefit a great deal from a stable and strong society funded by taxes. And we see that many of the loopholes that have been in place have led to a huge inequality. That the loopholes and tax cuts that have been put in place since the past 40 years have led to this income inequality. That have the rich always had a bigger percentage of our income? Well, yeah, that's pretty natural. But the huge gap between the rich and everybody else was not like this 50, 60 years ago. And that is because of these massive tax cuts and these loopholes. They're going to argue that trickle-down economics just doesn't work. Cutting taxes doesn't lead to job growth. When federal tax rates were at their highest in the 1950s, unemployment was at its lowest. When taxes were cut in the 80s and through the 2000s, unemployment went up. The top 1% having 13% of all wealth means that overall, more and more people have less and less and less. And much of those tax savings from large companies were spent instead on the investors, on the board members, on the CEOs, on giving people golden parachutes when their businesses went bankrupt, that they still got to leave with millions of dollars. It wasn't spent back on their employees, wasn't spent back into the economy. Instead, it was spent more back into their own accounts, into their own bank accounts. The rich got richer, poor got poorer. And many of the loopholes that are in our tax structure allow top-earning companies in the United States to pay little or no taxes. Amazon, one of the wealthiest companies on the planet, pays hardly anything in corporate taxes. So don't give me this thing that cutting taxes is not going to help out our economy. If these companies who benefit the most from our spending then spent it back into our country, overall, it would help out. Cutting taxes also means then we have to cut programs that benefit Americans and would increase our overall debt and deficits. Less taxes means less revenue for the government. So the government has less money in order to pay for these large tax cuts that benefit primarily the rich. Then we have to take the money from somewhere, and it's going to eliminate programs for education, programs to protect our environment, programs for the arts, programs for healthcare, programs to help our poorest citizens like welfare and food stamps. All those programs are made to serve the lower and middle class Americans. Money for college loans, cut that. And instead, the lower class and middle class have to pick up the slack where the rich are getting even more money back in their pockets. And this means that our local and state governments also have to increase taxes, which is going to affect, once again, the lower middle classes more. On top of it, you're going to see a lot of jobs reduced in the federal government. The federal government is a massive employer. If we cut taxes, that means those jobs are gone. Where are those people going to work? In order to continue, other costly programs like entitlements, like Medicare, Social Security, or funding the military, which we pay a lot into, we're going to have to borrow money if we cut taxes. And this is going to and has led to giant deficits.